Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our next curriculum and subject selection event. So what curriculum are you taking? How do you choose subjects? How well are you prepared for your university or career? Today's event is all about that. Let's dive right in. My name is Kieran Coulter, and I am the admissions officer here for Crimson Global Academy Africa. A little bit about myself. I completed my undergraduate degree in psychology and communication science and my postgraduate in marketing management. I've also been with Crimson for just over 4 years, working for both Crimson Education and Crimson Global Academy. In terms of what we are going to cover today, we'll be talking all things curriculum and subject selection. There's a lot to cover, so feel free to take as many photos of the slides as you need. We will run through the differences between the curricula here, also touching on what a local curriculum means. We will not be advocating a particular pathway. That choice can depend on a variety of factors. Like, are you flourishing in your current school? In that case, why change? Or if you are pursuing a particular university pathway that requires particular subjects, and obviously that will change things. All curricula have advantages and disadvantages. So it is a personal choice based on many factors, and hopefully today will help you to understand those choices a bit better. All right, well, now let me introduce you to Rebecca Pretorius, our speaker for this afternoon. She is Crimson's country manager, but let me hand over to you, Rebecca, to introduce yourself a bit more.
All right, sorry, let me start again. Thanks so much. Excited to talk about this topic today. As you can see from my background, my roots are really in curriculum development. I've spent a number of years in educational publishing, EdTech, and then of course the admissions space. So previously worked as publishing director, e-learning director, and digital directors of big global education companies. So really kind of starting my career in educational publishing, and so this space is really my first love. So very excited to talk about this topic today.
All right, Rebecca, so this is a great place for us to start. We obviously have a lot of people with us today who are doing a wide variety of curriculums, from the IEB and NSC in South Africa to the WACE, the KCSE in other parts of Africa, right through to the international curriculums, like the A-levels and the International Baccalaureate. And of course, we don't just have students from our region, South Africa and Africa. We have students from across the world doing a whole bunch of different local curriculums, like the Abattoir in Germany, the NCEA in New Zealand, the ATAR in Australia, the CBSE in India, and of course, many more. So what is actually involved when choosing the right curriculum?
Sure. So I think we're not necessarily covering, this in detail today, kind of future-proof skills or skills students need for future success. But why this is important is because what you do at school, your curriculum, your subjects, but also beyond that, your extracurricular, your hobbies, your online activities are either giving you or not giving you the skills you need to succeed, or a student needs to succeed. And so that's all tied up with, kind of what kind of curriculum you choose and what kind of subjects you do as well. But like I said, it's more than that as well. So there isn't, of course, a crystal ball that can tell us exactly what skills will be needed or won't be needed. But what you can see here is that the skills listed here are not digital literacy, for example. Preparing students for future careers requires thinking beyond those hard skills, cultivating those soft skills that help students better able to adapt to a changing work environment. So that doesn't mean hard skills aren't important, of course. It means that schools, teachers, parents, and students need to think about also developing core skills behind those hard skills. For example, if tech changes all the time, knowing a programming language is not the real skill, but it's knowing how to learn these skills, which in fact change all the time. That becomes really important. So that's all tied in with what I'm going to be talking about today. So the first topic or part that I'm going to be covering, we kind of talk about the 3 pillars of international admission. So when we think about subjects, when we think about academics, when we think about curriculum development, choice, all of those, really we think about it from the framework of university application. So the 3 pillars are basically, what are the foundations, what are the foundational components of admission to universities all around the world? And how can you focus on those pillars and then develop those pillars during your time in high school, or your child's time in high school, for those parents that are joining us? So the 3 pillars of a strong university application are academics, number 1, extracurriculars and leadership, number 2, and essay and interview skills, the kind of personal qualities part of the application, as well as number 3. Of course, essay and interview skills come quite a bit later in the process when you're actually submitting your application. So this typically comes in the final year of a student's high school career. In today's presentation, we'll be primarily focusing on just one of those pillars, academics. Strong academics are going to be the key component of top university admissions. Academics really encompassing your grades, your test scores, the subjects that you take, the curriculum that you take, the most important components when it comes to university admissions. And that's true for any country in the world, whether it's the US, whether it's the UK, South Africa, anywhere else as well, other countries around the world. So university admissions decisions are first and foremost decided based on your academics. Like I say, your grades, the subjects you're taking, any relevant test scores. And then don't just take it from us, though. Here is a snippet of some of the best universities, or most highly ranked universities in the world: Stanford, Cambridge, Harvard, Princeton, University of British Columbia, and in the region where I'm sitting right now, UCT, of course, in South Africa. And they all agree, as you can read from these quotes here, that admission decisions are based on academic criteria. Academic criteria are, of course, going to take up the biggest proportion of an admissions review. So when admissions officers evaluate a student, the first thing they're going to look at, of course, is the student's academic preparation on the subjects that they've taken, what curriculum they've done, how many subjects they've done, and of course the grades, the scores, the marks that they've received, both on external exams and in a number of cases on internal grading or system within a school. All right, so when we think about academics, these are the factors that go into how academics are viewed by admissions officers around the world. So the first one, what curriculum are you taking? As you said right at the start, Kieran, how well has that prepared you for university? Certainly at CGA, for Crimson Global Academy, Crimson's online school, we offer the Pearson Edexcel International A-level qualification. We offer Cambridge as well. Through DaVinci, our one-to-one tutoring part of the school. We also offer the US High School Diploma and AP courses. So quite a wide variety of curriculum. So really that's the first bucket there. The second bucket, subjects. We will spend a bit more time on this later in the event as well, but what subjects have you chosen? So are you taking subjects, for example, that are related to your future course or the major that you've selected, or the one you want to study? We would, of course, expect that a student interested in studying a STEM-based topic, so science, technology, engineering, and maths, to be taking, maths and science subjects. So perhaps taking maths, physics, chemistry for if they're taking A-levels. Perhaps they're taking, for example, further maths as well, alongside math, if they're really kind of strong in that area. For a student, of course, who's interested in the humanities or social sciences, we may see them take something like English language, another language, French, perhaps history. And it's great. It's one thing to think about having a large variety, a large number of subjects, but what's even more important are your grades within those core subjects. So the core required subjects that you must take. So what this means is, before you think about what is the next bucket, which is acceleration, so before you think about taking more subjects than what's required, make sure to focus on the quality of those required subjects first. And we will talk a little bit later. I will touch on what are those required subjects. So when we think about international A-levels, when we think about international GCSEs, a student might be required to take just 5 GCSEs, while a student might be required to take just 3 A-levels. So there may be students who want to take more and accelerate in a particular area. We would recommend that only if a student has really excelled within their core subjects first. It's much more preferable, for example, to do 3 A-level subjects and get an A in all of them, rather than take 4 A-level subjects or even 5 and getting B's and C's in them. So we really want students to focus on quality before quantity in their subjects. But certainly acceleration, if a student is really strong in a particular area, is certainly an option. Breadth here refers to how many subjects you're taking, the breadth of the subjects you're covering. So it is great to have depth in a particular area, particular kind of subjects, but it's also good to have breadth as well. So within the international A-level curriculum, we typically see students focus on breadth a little bit earlier in their high school careers. So the equivalent of, kind of grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, and really, kind of the first 2 years of high school, and then a little bit later on, in the last kind of 2 years, really drilling down and focusing on that depth. So while we expect a student who's good at STEM, for example, wants to focus on that to be good at maths and sciences, we also want to see them take, a broader variety of subjects in their earlier high school career as well. Like I say, English, maybe another humanities subject like history, text heavy, detailed kind of subject, social sciences as well. And then finally, like I say, the element that goes into evaluating a student's academics is acceleration. So have you taken any subjects in advance, for example, of when another student might normally take them at high school as well?
Yeah, Eureka, you're so right there. I mean, I'm always talking to my students about telling them not to stick to just the minimum requirements. More, as we all know, more is always more when it comes to international admissions. And just to know the internet, just because of how competitive the international university admissions game is nowadays, that it really, really benefits to understand what these minimum requirements are, but then to realize that, of course, one needs to exceed them, but of course, to exceed them meaningfully rather than just aiming for the minimum requirement.
Absolutely, Kieran. One mistake that we see is when students are preparing for admissions to international universities, take a look, they're doing their research relying on just kind of simply those minimum requirements that you see on a university's website. Students will look on that website, whether it's a university in the US or UK, Australia, for example, and say, oh, well, the minimum requirements is simply a B average, or students are only getting this particular test score, and that's the minimum to be accepted into that university. Of course, the minimum, you have to have the minimum in order to be considered, but the minimum is usually not going to be acceptable for international students. Especially international students are, of course, going to be the minority in these universities. So if you attend a university in the US or in the UK, you'll find that maybe at most kind of 15-20% of the entire student body will be international. So international students are going to be in the minority, and it is much more difficult for international students to be accepted to certain colleges and universities around the world. So that's why it's a case of not simply relying on those minimum requirements. In most cases, it will be enough to be considered, but it may not be enough to wow an admissions officer and kind of put you over the line in terms of being accepted. And let's have a look at the next pillar. So I'm not going to spend any real time on this. It's not the subject of today. It's a whole other event. But when it comes to the kind of second big pillar that I mentioned a little bit earlier of extracurricular and leadership activities, we usually talk about extracurriculars as kind of distinctly academic focused extracurriculars or interest focused extracurricular activities. So just want to reiterate the importance of leadership, though, in those extracurriculars, leading a club, running an initiative, not just being a member of something or a volunteer or a participant, but actively showing leadership. Extracurriculars are a vital part of admissions, especially universities abroad, most notably the US, and really in terms of showing the all-round nature of a student. So like I say, it could be academic, so maths club, for example, interest focus such as violin, if you play an instrument, and then with the separate category of leadership. And what that is really when you're demonstrating your leadership potential, when you're demonstrating that through a newfound initiative or with an initiative that already exists. So it could be being a founder of a club versus, kind of heading up a particular club. So in the innovative sense, starting a brand new activity, something you're interested in, something you manage yourself in order to kind of showcase the full suite of your kind of leadership and management capabilities. And then before we move on from this topic today, just some advice around extracurricular activities. For extracurricular activities, always approach these activities wisely. Your time is very precious. A general number of activities for a student to be participating in at any kind of given time could be kind of 5 to 6 as a good number. That's a bit manageable. It's achievable for most students. Fewer activities is okay because it is quality over quantity. That's very, very, very important. And then you'll choose kind of 1 or 2 activities that you'll really focus in your time on. And those are going to be the big activities that you're most invested in. For a lot of students, it's their kind of number 1 passion or hobby that they have. It could be a sport, could be water polo, for example, could be music, could be an activity such as debate, or even some sort of academic interest like mathematics or engineering. So the activities you really, really want to focus your time on, and you might then spend a lot more time proportionally in the week or the year on those particular activities. Important, of course, to keep progressing, not to kind of stay in one spot with those, to showcase growth, to showcase development, and you might do that through taking on those leadership roles as well. All right, so I'll move on from that second pillar and really go back to the first one that we're talking about today, academics, and really the meat of what we're talking about today. So choosing the qualification with the assessment structure that best suits your learning preferences will help you get the grades necessary for admission into top universities, and obviously also set you up for your dream career. So here, what we'll do is really just help you compare the most kind of commonly studied international curricula, A-levels, IB being the International Baccalaureate, and AP courses, the kind of US recognized courses. All of those academically challenged, considered to be the kind of highest high school options students can take, helping students to apply to top universities and kind of opening up that pathway for them. But despite those similarities there are certainly differences between them. And then on local qualifications, something to consider, right? Where is it recognized? What's the academic rigor? How well known is that curriculum? What is my pathway? What is the impact of that? And this also all applies to subject choice, but I'll a bit more on that later. As Kieran said, we're not going to be focusing on one particular curriculum today. You'll see the advantages and shortcomings of all of them, including a local qualification. I'll run through the local South African qualification as an example, although as Kieran indicated, that kind of would apply to a number of different countries, whether it's, countries in our region or countries in Europe and elsewhere where there is a local curriculum in place, and students choose between that or perhaps taking an international curriculum. So certainly today, we work with students all the time and families all the time who may be looking for an online school offering international curricula. We hope then that CGA is a good home for you. We also have students who are at physical schools who are very happy there doing a local qualification, which does meet their targets and the university requirements. And there are parents of, kind of younger students who we chat to who are also looking to understand what impact their school decisions will have. So we're kind of covering everything in a really factual way today. The one thing I hope you get from today is that there are options based on your targets and interests, but that also that doing one thing doesn't necessarily mean you're stuck. Earlier, I mentioned breadth and I mentioned acceleration. So if a student, your child is strong at maths or passionate about law, you could be taking a course subject from a different curriculum. You don't necessarily have to leave your school to do it. And I always encourage people to think about acceleration or breadth as being something that you can pursue outside of school by yourself if it's not offered within your school environment that you're happy in. All right, so to kind of better understand the advantage and disadvantage of each curriculum, we've kind of broken them down into those particular categories for you to have a look at, and then we can probably take a look at those.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that, Rebecca. That's really, really insightful. But obviously, as you alluded to there, let's jump in now into what the different curricula are, what some of the advantages are, what even some of the disadvantages are for both local and even those international curriculum. I'm really looking forward to hear a bit more about that.
Okay, so let's start with a local one. I'm not going to be spending too much time on this today. because obviously this just focused particularly on South Africa, and we obviously have a wide variety of people who are maybe taking different curriculum and interested, but so you can kind of relate to what I say around a local curriculum here, for example, the South African one, to maybe your own kind of local curriculum. So a quick kind of 30-second overview. So in South Africa, anyone doing a local examination is doing this based on the local curriculum, which is the CAPS curriculum in South Africa. And at the end of matric, students will either write an IEB exam or they will write an NSC exam, both local qualifications. So we don't tend to pick up and drop subjects at various times. We're quite linear. We kind of do grade 8 to 12. You choose subjects by the end of grade 9. And students do pick up some AP advanced program or further studies, which are taken later and kind of picked up as the most challenging courses that one can take locally. So in South Africa, doing these exams is doing the CAPS curriculum, and what varies from school to school could be, kind of quality of teaching and learning, depth of teaching and learning, pace, amongst other factors like extracurriculars and so on available. And then let's have a look in detail in those kind of three categories, those three buckets that I showed you earlier. So a local or a state curriculum like the CAPS one is obviously particular to a country and therefore not well known internationally. It doesn't mean it's bad. It may be unknown, the rigor may not be understood, or the rigor may not be acknowledged. So many students around the world that work with Crimson targeting top universities may be doing a local IEB or other local curriculum, and around the world, whether it's Nigeria, Australia, New Zealand, India, Europe. The key benefits, though, of a South African qualification absolutely provides a well-rounded education. Students are required to take a wide variety of subjects, so there are a wide variety of subjects to choose from, and study as part of the curriculum. So students are required to take, kind of languages, sciences, and additional kind of extra subjects as well. Also designed to kind of make students into better citizens, better people, right? So taking an additional language, taking a local language, and a kind of social subject like life orientation to support personal development. Certainly our South African students are some of the busiest students our team work with, so because of that big subject load, and a breadth of extracurriculars in many schools, which are really set up to encourage participation and for a well-rounded human to come out at the end of that process. Some of the drawbacks or shortcomings I mentioned just now, the breadth of subjects. With that, of course, comes a bigger workload, a higher number of subjects. Also for strong, maybe, kind of focused students, like STEM focused students, forced to kind of take some of those additional subjects like the languages, the difficulty of having those subjects that is not your kind of preferred ones takes away from them being able to kind of drill down into the depth of those subjects that they want to take, as well as the difficulty of having those other subjects. Although, as I said, there are certainly advantages to that as well. Students do come out with, strong skills that they wouldn't have got if they were just kind of focusing on a kind of a STEM-based subject selection. What that does mean with that kind of broad subject selection, it means there may not be the depth that comes with A levels, for example. So fewer subjects, greater depth, and more subjects, maybe greater breadth. So for STEM students wanting to focus on sciences, it's kind of less possible with an IEB in this case, or an NSC. And the biggest kind of shortcoming for us is that for this curriculum, the CAPS curriculum, and in fact many local curriculum, is the lack of international recognition, which means that there are some constraints for South Africans and other students when applying to some of the top ranked universities in various places, US, UK, Europe. Some universities in the UK and Europe would not accept a student with an IEB or an NSC, as they would not necessarily see us as being academically as well prepared. And so we're excluded from a handful of universities. It is, though, limited. I mentioned a handful. And for many students, there is an alternative pathway or a different option. In some cases, even taking a foundation year program in some of those universities where they are excluded from. And maybe just some other general shortcomings. Maybe marking is not as granular. without, you know, an equivalent mark to differentiate that kind of 90 to 100%, which really kind of helps a student stand out.
Thanks so much for that, Rebecca. So obviously, maybe in terms of when one's looking at an international curriculum, then what is the best one then for me to take if I was a student looking to study overseas, or what, based on anything along those lines, and even stay locally, what is the best one for me to take?
Yeah, I'm not going to give that answer today, Kieran. I think that it's not that simple. It depends on a variety of factors, but I think so to better understand those differences, what you'll see here is just a breakdown, and so you know, just as I did with the CAPS curriculum, let's go into a more in-depth look at their advantages or disadvantages and shortcomings, and then people really, it's a case of people having a look at what best fits their kind of environment, their pathway, their targets, their interests, their pick of schools, and so on. But we can start with the IB. So the International Baccalaureate program, an internationally recognized curriculum, aims to foster kind of internationally minded and kind of well-rounded students as well, has quite a lot of similarities in that with the CAPS curriculum. Around 5,000 schools around the world offer the International Baccalaureate, including schools in South Africa. So let's have a look at some of that detail. So the IB diploma program, recognized by all leading universities, which instantly kind of puts students on the world stage, and contextualizes your application for them because of that level of recognition and standard around the world. So it does have you know, global recognition. It's effectively a university preparation program in that it teaches students skills, ways of learning that will set them up to do well at a tertiary education level. Provides good university preparation. So after 2 years of practice, students will have kind of mastered those fundamental skills, university style reports and essay writing, source citing, and even how to conduct independent research. So more broadly, because of the International Baccalaureate's heavy workload, which I should be coming on the next slide, but because of that, the advantage of that is that certainly students will be, you know, kind of experts at time management and self-study because of that. In the IB, you're very much taught how to think critically, which is necessary for university, where you will be exposed to many different concepts, opinions, and of course, people. I mentioned earlier the kind of well-rounded education. And so one of the goals of the IB diploma program is to develop those kind of well-rounded students. They provide a wide range of subjects to choose from to study as part of the curriculum. This range kind of shows the students' adaptability, strength of character, ability to push themselves, even through those subjects that may not be, you know, a strength, for example. In the IB, students will take some subjects at a higher level and some at a standard level, where the kind of former comprises, you know, 240 teaching hours and standard level 150 teaching hours. So that means you can kind of focus of allowing some of that depth and progression in the kind of stronger subjects. And
No, all right. Sorry, we lost you there for a second, Rebecca.
no problem. I think I'm back again.
No problem. Sorry about that.
All right, there we go. I think we're good. So I'm not sure where
I think we lost you off at personal development, is I think where we
Sure. So okay, so great. I mean, as I said, with the, you know, kind of the South African CAPS curriculum in the in the IB, designed to help students grow as, humans, not just as students. So there is a case component which places emphasis on emotional and social development by getting kind of students involved in activities outside of the classroom and to develop those kind of softer skills of empathy and teamwork. All right, so let's move on to A-levels. Just next slide. All right. So the international GCSEs and A-levels, the most commonly studied curriculum around the world. So based on the UK high school education system and adapted for kind of a global student-based. So subjects are designed to follow a kind of logical, structured syllabus with all the learning goals a student should expect to master over the course of their qualification, like clearly laid out. And you can go into, Pearson Edexcel website, for example, and have a look at that. Studied in over 10,000 schools by over 1 million students, 160 countries, over 1,400 universities worldwide recognize the A-level qualification as well, accepted by, of course, every UK university, many universities, hundreds of universities in the US, including all the Ivy League universities, and of course in many other kind of major student destinations, Canada, Australia, Singapore, South Africa, Germany, Netherlands, and so on. All right, so let's have a look at the detail around that. So a little bit about that pathway, just so that you understand how that's structured. So the pathway is kind of fairly straightforward, starts with year 11 or earlier, with students kind of sitting up to kind of 6 International General Certificate of Secondary Education, or International GCSE subjects. Those subjects are kind of structured as first introductions to a specific topic area that they cover. In certain countries, students begin at year 10 and sit kind of 8 to 10 subjects over the course of 2 years. And in year 12, students move on to the kind of A-levels that are broken down into 2 parts. So the AS level, usually done around kind of year 12, and the A2 level typically done in year 13 in kind of the British system. Traditionally, students take like 4 to 5 AS level subjects and then go down to 3 to 4 of those subjects in A2 level. If you choose to take an AS level subject and its exams without sitting the following one, the A2 the following year, you won't complete the kind of full A-level qualification, and instead would just be doing the AS qualification. The AS qualification does also count towards university entrance in a place like New Zealand and South Africa. All right, so let's have a look. The advantages of the A-level curriculum. So students really focus on what they enjoy, therefore a kind of higher motivation level. There is a possibility to kind of keep the depth of those subjects and kind of maintain, breadth of knowledge by taking more subjects. It is, of course, internationally recognized. There's a kind of balance of programs chosen that's kind of student-led, and it does promote independent learning and research skills. So it is an academically rigorous pathway. It does have a wide variety of kind of breadth and depth of content, as I said, kind of starting with international GCSEs and then moving through to AS and A2 level. And that really lays the foundation for coursework required as they progress through as well. There is a flexibility of subject selection. So the curriculum does allow students to choose up to kind of 6 subjects. In year 11, based on the interests, there are no particular requirements like in the International Baccalaureate or in the CAPS curriculum for South Africa. Each school might have kind of entry requirements, and students might choose based on what they want to study in university, but otherwise there aren't any restrictions. So it does allow students to have a good range of subjects based on their interests, and definitely kind of pursue those interests in some depth. The international GCSE and A-level exams are externally assessed, with students able to kind of sit 2 or 3 different dates during the year as well. And all of those kind of provisions mean that students have the opportunity to kind of score a higher mark in the exams as well. Edexcel also offers an extended project qualification, EPQ, which is designed to kind of develop learners' critical, reflective problem solving and independent learning skills, and does support students with a transition to higher education. As with everything though, there are shortcomings. So while students do have flexibility on what subjects they want to study, most schools limit students to kind of 4 or 5 subjects. This does mean that students don't have the kind of same breadth of subject like their peers, you know, maybe an IB, NSC, IB or AP curriculum. So this might become a deciding factor when applying to university. And the kind of wide range of subjects may kind of confuse students without a more rigid structure and requirements in place. From a course load point of view, if students do stick to those minimum requirements required to enter UK universities 3 A levels, they might not have the kind of really rigorous course load that admissions officers are looking for top US universities. So students doing the IB or AP curriculum have to take more subjects. So if you choose to do the A levels, it might be best to take more than the minimum subjects required if you have those, you know, kind of ambitions of targeting those kind of top US universities.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Well, now we see on the screen, it says APs. I'm just thinking back to when I was in school, everyone did, all the smart guys, the top set students were all doing the AP subjects. But from obviously what we understand, this is not the same AP. So essentially what I'd like to understand is what are the AP courses and why do they matter for our students?
Sure, let's have a look at that. So advanced placement courses, a set of US curricula really created by the College Board, and people may be most familiar with the College Board because of course they developed the SAT. And so they really give students the opportunity to take college level courses, so university level courses, which is why it's called advanced placement. And so depending on the score a student receives on the exam, receive some college credit as well. All right. Okay, let's jump into just a little bit more detail about that. So the advantages of that really can boost your candidacy for college applications. Like I say, it is a kind of college level course with top scores. So based on the scores you get, that kind of will determine what kind of credit you get. So you can get a head start on university work as well in high school. It is a challenging university level course. So it does allow, advanced students or students looking to kind of accelerate or take more challenging courses to go on and then take a really kind of high level course too. You can take additional courses not offered in school and at depth, of course, to show your interest if you're, looking to stand out on a college admissions application, but also just to explore your areas of passion. You can kind of take those additional courses. And of course, overall, just really challenge yourself by taking the kind of most rigorous course available to you. Some shortcomings of that, of course, global recognition in the US and Canada. Oxbridge does consider a high number of kind of 5+ AP courses as entry, but otherwise, it's a kind of a US qualification and the credit is given there. You need to do very well in them, though, in order to gain that credit. They are college level courses, so they are quite difficult. And in many places around the world, in large parts of Africa and Nigeria, for example, it's not an issue, but in South Africa, test sites or test centers are limited. So it's always really important to kind of check whether you've got a test center in your region where you can take tests.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca. So obviously this is something that schools, parents, students are always asking us about. It's obviously changes a student's life long-term. How do you actually go about selecting the right subjects? In South Africa, as we all know, students are choosing these subjects super early, in grade 9 already in some cases. So how can they make sure that they're making the right choice? And what could you as a parent, family, or even a school be doing to assist when around, making the right subject selections and assisting these students?
So firstly, I think asking questions. So in these key areas that you see in front of you. So around interests, passion, study habits, academic performance, extracurricular commitments, and university goals. So you can be looking at whether there are any specific strengths or weaknesses that you can dive into. Do those strengths and weaknesses mesh with a student's academic, university entrance, or career goals? So for example, a student might want to study medicine, but does their academic ability kind of line up with that, right? Are they capable of succeeding in all three sciences? So important to kind of poke holes in that and really make sure that you ask the questions around that, whether, like I say, it's kind of a parent, student, school. In making those subject choice, we would suggest that it's considered in kind of order of priority, and I'll go into each of those in a bit more depth. But so, for example, do subjects fulfill prerequisite university requirements? Do subjects allow a student to explore a subject related to their intended major or degree more deeply? And does that subject selection, or do subjects build breadth in a student's academic portfolio? So often the piece of advice students get is to kind of follow their passion when choosing a kind of career or university degree. If that's the only piece of advice that students are given, to follow your passion, it's quite vague. It's quite open-ended for students to take or do something with, but it is important for students to understand or know at some point the kinds of things that they're passionate about, that they like doing, right? So, for example, a student might not be passionate about accounting because they might not have any experience by the time they're choosing subjects, but they might be really passionate at solving problems. They might know that they love working with numbers. And those are the types of things that students might translate into a future career. So a career is probably somewhere at the kind of nexus of finding what your passions are, what you like to do, with an element of practicality in there as well, right? What are you good at? Where are you getting high marks? A student who doesn't know what they want to do yet, completely normal, of course, whether it's at the beginning or end of high school that they feel that way. And for when you're choosing subjects with that in mind, just a healthy dose of exploration. So, kind of choosing varied subjects. And sometimes for students that haven't encountered subjects that are a little bit more specialized. So students haven't taken economics, they haven't taken psychology if they've got access to an A-level curriculum. So taking those classes actually opens a lot of eyes for students, because it does, those kinds of subjects expose them to kind of new concepts, new ways of thinking, and they're kind of connected to possible majors or careers. So I would encourage a lot of exploration outside of school, which is not necessarily something that students maybe do enough of. We're very school focused. We want all the exploration to be contained in school. It doesn't have to be. Students certainly are responsible for exploring some of those interests outside of school as well, whether that's learning about topics they're interested in online, that they may not be covering in school, whether it's exploring kind of friends and families, jobs and careers as well. So it is incumbent upon a student to take that responsibility, do some stuff outside of school, and doing that will help make students kind of subject choices. It will help with students making subject choices, and even later when kind of thinking about majors or careers even further on. Most commonly, this is how we recommend to students to think about, kind of choosing subjects, to think about those three different pathways. So if you know your kind of career and university pathway, if you know your kind of passions and interests, and if you're kind of building foundations if you don't necessarily, kind of have those kind of first two waxed, and you just want to build foundations, and then kind of one around extenuating pathways, which I'll touch on. All right, so the first one, the first one might be kind of career or university focused. So let's say, for example, a student's really focused on this idea of getting into a specific university, or focused on an idea of a specific country or a specific career. Then if they already have that in mind, they can work backwards in order to make sure that they're taking the right courses, the right subjects that lead to that goal. It could be the questions then that you're asking a student focused on countries, focused on universities, focused on course requirements. So a great example there for you to have a look at, if a student's interested in studying economics, and looking at an A-level, maybe taking maths, economics, psychology, law. If it's a student taking an IEB exam, doing a CAPS curriculum, maybe taking maths, accounting, economics, IT, or history instead of, say, business studies and or CAT. So kind of looking at what are the preferred subjects and how that's going to kind of open up some of those subjects that they don't yet kind of know enough about. If we have a look at number 2, for students who might not be super defined in terms of what university or career that they might be interested in, we encourage students to kind of, follow their passions and interests, right? So student who's very interested in STEM subjects, maths and some sciences, and then you want to kind of take more subjects, obviously, in that area. Student who's more interested in the arts, humanities, social science orientated, then kind of explore those particular areas. The questions that you're asking about here are more about what a student likes, what a student doesn't like, what they're good at, versus being kind of really focused on a specific pathway. And then for students, other students, maybe a little bit younger, maybe just not kind of sure about any of, don't have a particular passion or interest, not sure about a particular country, university, career pathway, that's all okay. Of course, we really just would encourage a strong foundation in this core subject. So those are always going to be, of course, English and maths. Those are key, essential, no matter what country, what university pathway a student might choose in the future. So we really encourage students to build like really strong foundations in English and math, and maybe choose a broader spread of subjects so that they have some choice to specialize when they're ready without being kind of tied to an area really early. And that's where, kind of certain curricula, like a CAPS curricula and the International Baccalaureate are really good. Or if students are taking GCSEs, can take kind of a broader spread of subjects. And there may be some of the outlying reasons for making a curriculum or subject choice. Family could be emigrating to the US, for example, and maybe better off with a particular curriculum like a US high school diploma, APs instead of A-levels, for example. They want to apply as an athlete, so need kind of social sciences and subjects that would give them specific NCAA, so the kind of college athletic management body eligibility. So understanding that that might be really important in helping families and students reach that subject selection point. So here's a chart, if anyone wants to kind of take a screenshot of that, which you can kind of visualize kind of the required subjects for certain kind of common majors or pathways or degree choices. So let's say, for example, you want to study economics or business, maths is always going to be the kind of number one required subject. Of course, economics and business may be strongly recommended, but not necessarily required. And then other subjects may help you, such as politics, psychology, and further maths. So really just a kind of snapshot view on some of those really kind of common majors and what would be both required, what would be recommended, what would be helpful, and some of those different. So just to kind of point out those two differences, we can just go back again to the previous slide just to point out those two differences. Medicine and law, for example, both not undergrads degrees in the US, so you don't necessarily have to kind of take those subjects in order to get into a graduate program. All right, and then next slide, really just a very quick comparison again between US and UK admissions and how that relates to curricula and subject choice. So US admissions really focus on what we call kind of well lopsided students. So what that means is students who have both the breadth but also depth in kind of one particular kind of area. So really means a student has no kind of discernible weaknesses. They should be good at most things. So they don't necessarily want a student who's only good at maths or only good at history. They want students who generally excel in most subjects. They get good grades, but they're also very talented in a particular area. So subject choice for the US is generally quite flexible. It doesn't matter that much what you take in high school, since many subjects are not kind of absolutely required for university admissions. And then students can combine multiple different curriculum qualifications for evaluation. So that's really important because let's say you're a South African student, you're doing an IEB at school, and what that means is you could have part-time classes with CGA, of course, and US admissions would take all of those extra courses into account when evaluating your admissions. When we think across the pond of UK admissions, what's kind of most prized is aptitude and depth. So it's very, very important for students to be strong academically, especially in that course or major degree that they are studying. So intelligence, passion, ability to showcase those interests is really prized within the admissions process. And subject choice for the UK is very important to consider, because the courses that you choose in high school determine the major or course that you can select in university in many cases. So it's very important, because if you haven't selected the correct courses, the correct subjects in high school, you can't apply then to certain majors. So it's important to consider what subjects you're doing in high school, making sure that you're eligible to apply to the major degree that you want to later on. And that last point, just kind of really important. It means that basically the UK will evaluate one particular curriculum that you're doing. So if you're doing A levels, they will evaluate A levels. If you're doing an IEB, they will evaluate the IEB that you're doing.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. Well, I mean, based on exactly what you've just said there, especially when it comes to studying in the UK. So, I know myself, for example, I see CGA students all the time, and I work very closely with them to help to align, obviously, their subjects to a particular major or degree that they're looking to pursue. But I think it would be very helpful if we can run through some examples of some subject selection. So it's particularly for those students taking A levels, as you said a bit earlier, that's when it sort of becomes a bit make or break sort of situation. But maybe we can start with medicine, which is, of course, a top choice for many of our CGA and, of course, our course students as well.
Sure. And even for students not taking an A-level curriculum, you can use some of the thinking, behind this in your subject choice as well. So with medicine, this is the only one, and the reason there's an IGCSE course selection here, the rest will just look at what it would mean for A-levels, but is because we have to make sure that students have kind of taken the appropriate GCSE subjects and the appropriate minimum number of subjects if they're interested in UK medicine. So there isn't really a kind of another course subject at major at kind of university where if a student comes in to us, say, for example, at CGA for A levels and they haven't done GCSEs, that the school needs to kind of give some GCSE, like a number requirement on the number of GCSEs required. So medicine is unique in that the standard recommendation is 6 IGCSE subjects, to take into account that there are a minimum number of IGCSE subjects required for medical schools. Oxford, Cambridge, and a lot of great top UK medical schools don't have GCSE requirements, but certainly UK medicine does have that kind of particular requirement. And we recommend English language here because many medical schools prefer English language to literature. Yeah, so I think that's kind of fairly self-explanatory. And including South Africa, for example, requiring kind of English language and not English literature. All right, for the following pages, I'm just going to cover what would be the kind of AS and A level subject choices for an IGCSE student. You may just be taking a kind of broader selection of subjects, right, covering humanities and science to give them a kind of a stronger, broader foundation here. So in the slides here and going forward, the standard recommendation is kind of what the vast majority of our kind of CGA students would be taking. So that means kind of 4 AS courses aligned with their interests, chosen major, and taking into account their kind of university or country requirements. Rigorous recommendation may also mean 4 AS subjects, as stronger grades are advantageous, as I said earlier, over more subjects, but rigorous recommendation may be appropriate for students who are targeting kind of top universities that have more stringent requirements. Just a reminder that for UK entries, universities won't make offers based on multiple curricula, so APs and A levels, so it's not advantageous for students to kind of combine that. But for US entry, all subjects are taken into account during the admissions process. So taking more subjects with higher grades generally benefits the student very well. So for the US, breadth, of course, is a slight preference unless a student is specializing. We would recommend all students study English and math at AS level. And as I said, quality versus quantity. More subjects may not always be helpful and would hurt a student if they're not academically well prepared. So that's kind of important. I think that's kind of the key thing there. Just the one last thing to say in terms of the international GCSE to AS level jump is quite large. So 4 AS subjects, even though it may not sound a lot, is quite a difficult course load. And so taking kind of 5 AS subjects is often kind of more difficult for a lot of students. So again, it goes back to kind of recommending additional subjects we wouldn't necessarily recommend students do additional subjects if that's going to do a lot of harm. All right, and then having a look at so the slide, social sciences, including PPE, maths, economics, history, a 4th subject. The rigorous recommendation would be aligned with kind of the standard one. Note that PPE is generally not offered. So politics, philosophy, and economics generally not offered as a major in the US. Economics, business management, kind of maybe that's where you could see that. But and for a standard recommendation, we would just recommend a student takes maths and economics. But if you are going to be targeting maths and business management and business at Cambridge or something like that, then, or even LSE, London School of Economics, we'd recommend that you would be taking further math, because that's always a strong recommendation, and will help you stand out in the process as well. All right, next one, just sorry, there we go. High level maths preparation, of course, essential to applying to kind of business economics management programs. Business studies is not always highly recommended, but students generally taking kind of economics and not necessarily taking business and economics at the same time.
Rebecca, so this is obviously computer science. We at CJ, we see a lot of, mainly STEM, science, technology, engineering, medical related pathways, but we do see a lot of my students, especially later, are particularly interested in computer science. So I'm very interested to see, what it is what would be the recommended subjects for students looking to pursue a pathway in computer science.
So for computer science, the standard and maybe rigorous recommendation, as you can see, differ. We would recommend students who are targeting kind of top level computer science programs to take further maths. So for students outside of this curriculum, obviously taking, the most kind of rigorous kind of math courses that you can, math subjects that you can. So if a student, for example, interested in computer science is looking to target the US, we would recommend kind of maths, further maths, physics, chemistry, English. And then they would also be kind of set to apply to the UK, to apply to kind of top level computer sciences programs there as well. And taking English could help them there, set up, if they need to be kind of set up to apply to those top computer science or engineering programs in the US. All right, for engineering, the same thing. A rigorous recommendation is that students take further math. So if it goes back to what I kind of said, in the beginning about subject selection, kind of really looking at how a student's academic performance aligns or meshes with their particular interest. So a student interested in engineering really needs to have strong maths performance. Maths, same thing, standard recommendation here, maths, further maths, and the rigorous recommendation remains the same. To have a quick look at humanities, so, I think pretty standard, kind of English and kind of strong humanities, text-based subjects for that. And then we can look at psychology.
So Rebecca, I actually, as we know, I studied psychology and, I did a local curriculum in South Africa and I didn't have the opportunity to do psychology as an A level, which I know some students do. But if I was going to study psychology in the UK, would it be recommended that I actually take this as a subject?
No, you know, you can take one of the sciences here, chemistry, biology, gives a student flexibility to study something else if they're not kind of very interested in psychology, and you don't actually have to take psychology in order to study psychology.
And I'm guessing the same thing would apply for law, or would one need to take law then if I wanted to pursue a law pathway?
No, absolutely. Students don't have to take law. It's more, as you can see from that subject choice there, English, history, their preparation in more kind of essay-based subjects. That is the most important thing here. And then for natural sciences, the same thing. A student doesn't need to take kind of all three sciences, just the two that maybe, you know, kind of align with what they're most interested in.
Well, thank you so much for that, Rebecca. That was highly insightful. But so if we wanted to have a chat with Crimson, so how can Crimson actually help you? So no matter whether you're in your final year of school or whether you just start in school and you need help to choose curriculums or subjects, reach out to us. Of course, we can definitely assist you, especially if you're looking to pursue an international university one day after school. So at Crimson, it's obviously a team of experts. We are very experienced with elite university admission support. So it's everyone working together to help students across every aspect of the admissions. Our model sees obviously students receive individualized support in every aspect of the application, from university selections strategy to test preparation, essay support, extracurricular mentoring, and of course, interview preparation. Essentially what Crimson does is we work with students, to help them to increase their competitiveness for the university of their dreams by working on every aspect of the application to help you become the most competitive applicant that you can be. So please guys, reach out to us today to discuss your pathway to a university abroad, and we'll have a look at your profile, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your best part, and what the best pathway would be for you going forward. However, if you are here today because you are looking at an online school option, obviously a little bit about CJ. CJ is, of course, a fully online school using state-of-the-art technology, such as online conferencing, screen sharing, interactive whiteboards, and breakout rooms, all, of course, with our top teachers to ensure effective learning for our students. As Rebecca said a bit earlier, CJ is, of course, accredited by both Pearson Edexcel to allow us to offer the international GCSEs and A-levels, but we're also accredited with the College Board to allow us to offer the advanced placement or AP curriculum. So what makes CJ unique? You can see a little bit of that on the screen. Some important things to point out there is, of course, our small real-time classes that are built for interaction and one-on-one teacher engagement. The CJ class has a maximum of 15 students a class. Of course, our classes are highly diverse with international students and a community of like-minded peers. Currently, classes we have students joining us from nearly 33 countries worldwide and growing day by day. Of course, our clubs are focused on developing interests and shaping young leaders with the skills that they actually do need to succeed. All of our clubs pursue a project-based participation in an elite global competition. And of course, you have access to our resources and our experienced guidance staff that have helped students gain admissions to some of the world's most elite universities. So as you can see here, we are currently offering a limited variety of subjects for a variety of ages for our bonus enrollment starting on the 1st of February. So if you would like to look at this, please reach out to me as soon as possible so that we can have a look at your enrollment, what that would involve, and what the next steps would be there. What are the best subjects for you, and how can we get you started in January? So once again, I'd just like to thank everyone for attending. Thank you again, Rebecca, for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate all of your insight here. If you are looking to have a chat with us about your curriculum, about your subject choice, or even a pathway to a particular dream university, please do reach out to us urgently and we can discuss all of this. But once again, thank you so much, Rebecca. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon. And thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.